Hi there and welcome back to our channel. Today we want to talk about how important it is for older travelers to make friends while they're traveling. Now, not only can making new friends make your travels more meaningful and fulfilling, but maintaining those friendships can lead to even more interesting travel and experiences in the future. Now, let me explain. We all know how important it is for people to maintain a healthy social network as they age. And studies have shown that people with limited social connections are more likely to develop dementia compared to those who have strong connections. This is often referred to as social isolation. And social isolation contributes to cognitive decline and consequently a higher risk of developing dementia. Now, we don't know exactly why this is, but it's suggested that social interaction stimulates brain activity and cognitive function, which may be protective against dementia. When I was much younger, I would ask my then 80-year-old grandmother how she was doing. And one of the things she would often say was, "Well, I've still got all my marbles." For older travelers like us, we obviously want to keep our marbles as long as we can so we can keep on traveling and enjoying life. Now, someone might ask, how can you develop a social network and strong social ties when you're constantly traveling from place to place? Don't you necessarily sacrifice some of these relationships when you're not in one place and going from place to place and you're not interacting with some of the same people on a day-to-day basis? Aren't most of your interactions with other people during your travels mostly superficial? And is it just like chatting with people at a cocktail party? Well, you might be surprised how easily you can keep expanding your social network and developing new relationships without sacrificing your existing long-term ones. Sure, at first you won't have the long history that these long-term relationships have, but you can develop them. For us older travelers, there seem to be two logical forms of travel that would be natural for developing social connections. And those would be, number one, organized group trips, and two, cruises. Now, Tanya and I have only been on a couple of organized group trips in our lives, and both were about 30 years ago. One was a group tour of China, and at that time, individual travel in China was very difficult, and the infrastructure was much less developed than it is now. The other one was an 8-person bicycle trip we took through Vietnam in 1994. And at that time, there weren't even guidebooks on Vietnam. While we did have a terrific time with our travel mates during these two trips, I can honestly say that, unfortunately, we have not kept long-term social contact with any of them. But as for cruises, for all the negative opinions about cruises and how they aren't really travel and how you're just around people that are a lot of times like you, we have made some very nice and sustainable social connections. There's a couple from Nova Scotia, for example, that we met on a world cruise, and we still keep in touch with them and have visited them in Canada, and they have come to visit us. And we're in contact with them regularly. We've recently visited a young woman from North Macedonia who we met on our cruise, and she's invited us to her wedding later this summer. We met a couple from Colorado, and we've kept in contact with them, and they came to visit us when we lived in Las Vegas, and we maintain that social connection. And we have two very good friends from Germany that we met on a cruise, and we see them probably once a year, maybe a little less, on a pretty much regular basis, and have done that over the last 10 years or so. So the opportunities are there to make those connections and nurture relationships, even though they're not with people that you would otherwise think would be the more logical ones in your social network, the ones that are in your neighborhood and people that you interact with on a regular basis. The third form of travel I might mention is slow travel, where you're in a specific location for a significant period of time. For example, Tanya and I lived in Korea for 4 years, and we maintained a number of social connections that we made while we were there. And one of them is a very nice lady from Sydney, Australia, Moo, who we've traveled with at different times and who we're going to visit later next year when we go visit Australia. Even when you're in a place for, say, only a couple of months, you can still develop some social connections while you're there. And those can be ones that you can continue. In all of the connections that we have made and maintained, the overall glue that seems to be there to keep us together is our mutual love of travel and curiosity about the world. And we don't think that these connections have caused our core neighborhood connections to suffer. So, okay, now I've been doing all the talking. What do you think? Have your social connections suffered because of the time you've spent traveling? Or maybe on the other hand, do you find yourself isolated and socially detached when you travel? That can happen. We'd love to hear you tell us about that in the comments. As an aside, one of the fun things for Tanya and I is being what we call linguistically isolated in some places we visit where we have no idea what the people are talking about. And it gives us a chance to make up our own stories as to what we think is going on and what they're saying, simply because we have no idea. Or we can become simply social idiots and where we can just be with our own thoughts. And that's not so bad either. There's a certain pleasure in that activity. So the whole point of this is to encourage you and us to realize how important social connections are in staving off dementia for as long as you can, or hopefully forever. And the more we can do that, the more satisfying and meaningful our travels can be. Remember, the whole goal is to keep your marbles, that is your cognitive ability, as long as you possibly can. So, that's it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching, and please let us know what you think. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.